My name's Linda, and I'm a member of Al-Anon.
And we're quite honored and excited to have the opportunity to share a little bit of our experience on the traditions as they apply to relationships. We like to open our talks with a quotation from Lois Wilson, who was asked what she did in a moment of silence, and she said, "I invite God to the meeting." And I'd ask all of you to please take a few moments and invite the God of your understanding to join us, to bless us all with open hearts so we may speak and hear through them. And we'll follow that with a serenity prayer. Let's take a few minutes and ask God to join us. Serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The traditions as we apply them to relationships, we do not consider ourselves to be experts on this. I would offer again, if somebody disagrees with anything we have to say, we hope to hear from you. Not talk to you, but hear from you. We may learn something. We sure hope to. I would like to start by telling you that the first lie I ever believed, and maybe the first one you ever believed, was, and they all lived happily ever after. I bought into that one, and I'm convinced that a relationship has to do with being a framework for growth, that I can't take responsibility for making her happy, and I can't give her responsibility for making me happy. Linda is going to read the odd traditions from... Did I say odd traditions of Al-Anon? No.
Yes, just every time, dear. Every time.
The odd-numbered traditions from Al-Anon literature, and I'm going to read the even-numbered ones from AA, and we're going to talk about that. And I'd like to say that we believe harmony is two people singing different notes that go together. And here's my lovely and talented and very exciting wife, Ms. Linda.
Thank you, husband. Yeah. I'm going to start off by breaking one of the rules. Scott says, don't you tell them that. So I'm going to
tell them that.
Don't tell them that. I'm going to start off by telling you that. When we agreed to do this workshop several months ago, everything was wonderful, fine, and this last week we've been fighting like cats and dogs.
Oh, yeah, that's an overstatement.
And the whole thing is that we don't know how to do this, you know, and I think you must not know how to do this or you wouldn't be sitting there. And so what we're here is on a journey together, just trying to work it out. But I do believe that traditions are very, very powerful, and when they're applied to family life, they can be unbelievable. And yesterday when I talked, they read the warranties and the concepts, and I'm thinking, whoa, there's even how those could be applied. So we're going to look into that possibility too. But anyway, we're here to talk about the traditions and how they apply to relationships. Not necessarily a husband-wife, significant other, boy-girl, but all relationships. Scott's father used to say that human beings are herd animals. We like bumping up against each other. So every single relationship we have, whether it's the person in the next car, whether it's the person at the checkout counter at the grocery store, whether it's the God of your understanding, I mean, our lives are built around relationships. And in the traditions, in the Al-Anon book, it says the 12 traditions. These guidelines are means of promoting harmony and growth in Al-Anon groups and in the worldwide fellowship of Al-Anon as a whole. Our group experience suggests that our unity depends upon our common adherence to these traditions. Important words there. Scott touched on one, harmony. The other one is growth. But the first tradition says this: our common welfare should come first. Personal progress for the greatest number depends upon unity. The important words in that to me are unity, for one thing. You know, I never had relationships before. I held hostages, and I just velcroed, you know, onto whoever was closest to me, whatever, you know, whoever was in my path. And what I'm trying to know now is that unity does not mean one body with two heads. It means individual people. The whole idea of a relationship was really overwhelming to me. In fact, ship, I kind of always thought of the Titanic, you know. It was destined for something. And so what we started chuckling about, we do a lot of fishing, and we float a lot of the rivers, and we float them in canoes. And so we started calling ours a relation canoe. And what happens about a canoe is you kind of have to always go in the same direction in a canoe, you know. And you always have to kind of inform each other if you're going to do something like stand up. And And at times you may get crossways and get in a little eddy and swirl around for a little while. But for the most part, a relation canoe works for us, okay? And in this relation canoe, with this tradition, our unity means that we have shared vision. That doesn't mean that we are just, glued together. Shared vision is best described for me is visualizing you're standing in the middle of a railroad track. And on each side are the rails. And then you have the cross ties. And our programs, our individualness are the rails. And our common things that we have are the what are those things called? Ties. Thank you. And if you stand on the railroad track, it looks like the track actually comes together. And that's the shared vision. But if you move on down the track, that crossing line never really happens. But you continue to have the shared vision. So what we try in unity is to be more married, not more enmeshed. We present ourselves as a couple, and we keep that shared vision. And I think our shared vision becomes clearer and clearer as the God of our understanding comes closer to being the same one, That's part of our shared vision. We don't have any pedestal worshiping. Y'all heard Scott this morning. Isn't he a fantastic man? He's absolutely an incredible man. It'd be very easy for me to put him on a pedestal, make him my higher power. And our ODAT book in Al-Anon is very clear on that. You put anybody on a pedestal, there's a reading about putting your sponsor on a pedestal, what's going to happen? They're only human and they're going to have to topple off. Nobody wants that responsibility. I don't want to be on a pedestal, any kind of worshiping in Scott's eyes, because it takes too much energy and I'm going to mess up and I'm going to fall off and it's going to be painful. So as close as we can have is harmony and unity. That doesn't mean that we're going to absolutely adore each other to the point of making each other their higher power. Real quick story. There was a newcomer in a meeting. She was absolutely gorgeous. She looked like a Barbie doll. She was so sweet and lovely. And she listened to the whole meeting. And any stories we share, we've got permission, by the way. We should just do that up front. And so this young woman, after the meeting, she didn't say anything through the whole meeting. And after the meeting, because we knew she was new, we kind of hovered around her. And we said, do you have any questions? What's going on with you? Blah, blah, like we do. And she says, well, you say in your closing, whatever your problems, there are those among us who've had them too. And we go, yeah, we've got a lot of experience here. We've been through a lot. Yeah, whatever your experience is, we've had it too. And she says, well, my husband is in treatment. And 2 days ago, his prize bull was struck by lightning, and I don't know what to do with it. That was a first, And we laughed and we said, have a barbecue or whatever, And of course, and she's this bright-eyed girl at her first Al-Anon. He's going to get out and I'm going to get blamed for God or for whatever caused this lightning strike. I'm going to get blamed for it. And the thing about unity is that you can't have those kind of feelings between each other. Life just has happened, and we just have to remember that we are in the same relation canoe.
To talk a little bit about the first tradition myself, I believe it's all about common welfare and unity. This whole workshop is about unity. And Linda and I have been married 8.5 years, and I would like to tell you my experience is that whoever coined the term blended family was obviously not in one. Part of what we do for unity is we get up and go to bed at the same time. And I bought this special, really ugly watch because it has multiple alarms on it. We set them 10 or 15 minutes apart, with the second one being get-up time in the morning. The first one goes off 10 or 15 minutes before that, and we cuddle and do our morning prayers in each other's arms. And we do that every day. And then when the second alarm goes off, to be honest with you, sometimes it wakes us both up. But it says saw through prayer and meditation to say achieved, and so we saw it, and I give us an A for that. And we also, we say grace together at meals, so that's 5 times a day. In addition to that, we do morning meditation together. I would guess we average 6 days a week, something like that. So we have a spiritual, physically living together, we live together spiritually. We also, and this is intermittent, at night sometimes we'll pray for individuals. We'll be laying in bed and we'll cuddle and say, all right, let's pray for some people. And one of us will name somebody and we'll hold them up to the sunlight of the Spirit in prayer together, silently, for 20 or 30 seconds, and then we do that for a while. That's part of our unity on the spiritual plane. I think it's very, very powerful for us. We have no closed subjects. I don't have anything I can't talk to her about, and vice versa. I don't take sponsored check-in calls after 9 o'clock at night. They can catch me at other times. I do take emergencies, and I tell them if you're not sure if it's an emergency, it is, call. But I don't take check-in calls after 9 o'clock at night. 9 o'clock at night to 8 o'clock in the morning is my family's time, with the obvious exception of emergencies. We also do something Linda calls a couple-up day, and that's where a couple of afternoons a month we will block the afternoon for us. And that's not to get the dry cleaning and run to the grocery store, and it's not to go visit family members. It's something for us. So if we're going to commit to this thing, we want to develop our relationship, our relation canoe, we have to commit time to it. Just like I want a relationship with God, then I have to commit time to that. That's kind of what prayer and meditation is about. This is tradition 2 from the, which, by the way, if you don't know, is actually, on the tradition 2, is longer than the long form of that particular tradition. Don't you love us? We understand that, don't we? For our group purpose, there's but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. This idea of a trusted, loving God, we had a ceremony and offered God our home and all of the things that we have in the physical plane. We've got an upstairs den kind of thing, we call it the meditation room, and we had a ceremony there where we did that. Part of my morning prayer is I ask God to help me treasure her. That's the term that I use. I learned that from a friend of mine, part of my daily prayer. And we complement each other. And I think that's really important. And I do it as often as I can. It has to be true. Okay? That's... You got that? Yeah. Okay. And her. Maybe you can imagine how easy that is. And I love this concept of God's will, and I found its definition. It looks to me on page 133 in the Big Book. It says, we are sure God wants to be happy, joyous, and God's will for me. And living this thing that we do is how I live that. And I would say also that secrets spoil spontaneity. So it's important that we don't have any secrets. And that way we can be. As soon as I do something I have to hide from her, I'm on yellow alert. And I don't want to live on yellow alert. I need to be gentle and at peace in myself. And that's the only way I know how to do it.
The important phrase in the second tradition for me, of course, is this wonderful one, a loving God. You know, I couldn't even stay in my journey in Al-Anon without a loving God one. But in a relationship where this loving God came in so important to me, it happened in the bedroom. Now, I'm in my third marriage.
I love this part.
You can't take your eyes off of him for a second. I'm trying to be, this is a difficult, and I'm glad this comes early, so this is what I've come to know as my bedroom prayer. You know, I'm in my third marriage. I've been single for times in my adult life. I married very young. I was just out there and very, very feisty. And I had misused the bedroom a lot of times. In fact, if you remember in my story in my first marriage, to punish my husband, I would sleep in the bathtub. I mean, you know, big punishment for him. But I had used it inappropriately to reward, punish, control, manipulate. It was not a good place for me. And yet I have this loving feeling for this man. And I believe that an exchange, a physical exchange between two people is a way to celebrate that type of love. And I believe I'm an adult female and all of those things. And I've had a lot of work around this, a lot of work with sponsors and with professionals. And yet when it was time for Scott and I to go into the bedroom, some of those old haunts would show up. My old stuff, and I had a great curiosity about his history, you know, before he got into AA. So, so this stuff would show up in my head, and I did what you taught me to do. I went to a loving God, and I said, I need some help here. I want to have this exchange. I want to be, you know, with this man. What am I supposed to do? And I was given a bedroom prayer. So before Scott and I are going to be physical, I just simply say this prayer. God, help me stay in the moment. That's all. God, help me stay in the moment. And when I pray that prayer, it takes away all of that past that happened up to that point. And it also takes away those feelings the next morning about, did he notice that I gained weight? And it keeps me in the moment, and then Mother Nature takes care of the rest, okay? Okay, we're finished. Okay. That's a loving, and I could not do that, and I could not share that with you guys if it wasn't for a loving God. The trusted servant parts, I believe that is that we're on the same team. We both have voice, we both have feelings, we both have emotions, but we work on the trust, and because trust is a self-esteem builder, and that's what this tradition says to me. There are times that one of us is a little more centered than the other, and sometimes the trusted servant has to be one or the other. Several years ago, Scott was going through some very, very tedious business things, and he was focused on that. And as the trusted servant, it was my job to hold the space, while he could be out there doing that. When our daughter was pregnant and she had a difficult pregnancy, and I was very intensely working with her and doctor's appointments, and we rotated that trusted servant space. He was holding the space for me. So I could come back after this journey that I was on out there, I could come back to a safe place. So that's how we become trusted servants for each other, and how it sometimes is in rotation, depending on what's going on in each other's lives. Also, the trusted servant happens, when you're going to go visit some family members, sometimes you kind of hear the music of Jaws showing up in the background, and you think, I'm going to need some help here. So that's how one of us kind of gets the trusted servant assignment during those particular times. We support each other. I guess that's the whole deal. We're on the same team here. The third tradition says, the relatives of alcoholics, when gathered together for mutual aid, may call themselves an Al-Anon family group, provided that, as a group, they have no other affiliation. The only requirement for membership is that there be a problem of alcoholism in a relative or friend. The key words for me to this are mutual aid. I used to have a practice of what I call brown bagging, Al-Anon brown bagging. A little different than an alcoholic brown bagging. I grew up in West Texas, and they had those strange laws, and I know about brown bagging, coming in a container of booze in a brown bag. My Al-Anon brown bagging was this. You may do something, and I wouldn't say anything about it, and I'd just stick it in that little brown bag. And then something the next day, you'd do something else. Very small, but I'd stick it in that brown bag. And then maybe you do a big thing, and I'd stick that in that brown bag. And then maybe, several weeks would go by, and you wouldn't do anything. You would eat your cereal wrong. And then you'd been eating your cereal that way for several months. And all of a sudden, I'd bring out this brown bag, and I'd dump it all on you at the same time. So if I'm going to have mutual aid, I cannot continue to brown bag. I have to let Scott know what's going on when it's going on. We have to stay clean with each other. I don't stuff it away any longer. We don't believe in rules. That sounds so harsh. Weren't we always trying to find out the rules and try to play by them, and then they'd get changed and we wouldn't know it. So what we had in our relationships really, really, really early on, I'm talking about even in the courting times, we had understandings. And we talked about this. And one of the understanding was I had this tremendous fear of abandonment. I'm an only child. I don't know where it comes from, but I have this feeling of abandonment, of being alone. And so I needed to put in place an understanding with Scott that if he was in this relationship, in this committed relationship, and even in this marriage, that if he needed to get out of it, he would just be able to verbalize that to me. He wouldn't act out. He wouldn't sabotage the situation. He would just trust me as an adult and say to me, this is no longer working for me and I need to leave. And then he would be adult enough about it to let me know that I could take care of myself under those things. The only requirement for membership, those things for me under this tradition, our requirement for membership in this relationship are threefold. God is first. No argument about that. Our program is second, because if each of us don't have our program, then we don't have anything to give to each other. And then each other, we're third. We're always going to be third on the list. And sometimes when something intense is going on, I get bumped down to fourth or fifth. I think Scott's gone through a growth time with our new grandsons that he feels like he's gotten bumped down. I mean, if you'd eat your spinach like they do, maybe you'd move up on the list.
It's not dull at our house. She used the term, hold the space. And what that means is that when one of us has got a problem like that, is the other one prayerfully holds the space. It means I don't get to be upset by small things. That's part of what holding the space means when she's having a rough go and vice versa. We don't work each other's programs. We have an incoming AA telephone. We have an incoming Al-Anon telephone. They are different. That's been very helpful. We have agreements, and one of our agreements is either one of us can say either one of these things to the other one and get a positive response. We've already agreed to this. One of them is, how long has it been since you've been to a meeting? And the other one is, would you be willing to talk to your sponsor about that? Beyond that, we do not go. We defined our relationship. I am free to stay. I'm also free to go. It's interesting, if I don't have both, I don't have either. Freedom is always both sides. I desire to be here. Part of this was Linda became concerned about a woman in my home group and asked me to, I have a very huggy, bumpy, rub up against each other home group. And she asked me, she said, I'm very concerned and nervous about this particular woman. I'd appreciate if you would not hug her. I now shake that woman's hand, always. And she asked me about, I think she may well have been right about that particular one. She asked me about another one about a year ago, same situation, would you shake her hand? I agreed to it. I think she's wrong about that one, but that doesn't matter. That does not matter. I have a primary relationship here. And how she feels about that, if she's saying that about all of them, we probably need to get some professional help, but that's not the situation. All right, that's not it. And she, and what she thinks about all that is more important to me than the other. If it weren't, then I think we might be in some kind of trouble. Tradition 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or A as a whole. I looked up autonomous. It's having the right of power of self-government, self-contained. That means I don't give what is hers to others, physical or emotional. It means that if I'm expecting to have emotional strife, I tell her. I'm entering into a difficult business negotiation. I'm on the way to see a particular family member who is, forgive me for taking the inventory, I think pretty sick. And I tend to get pretty sick if I spend a lot of time in that presence. Well, she knows that on the way out. I get her prayer support while I'm gone, and when I come back, weird as a football bat, she doesn't take it personally and continues to support me, and that has been just so helpful. She gets my news first. It's important she doesn't hear about a major thing in my life from somebody else. And so I'm very careful that she gets my news first. She gets my energy. I listen to her day each night, and she listens to mine. And I learned this from her, and the best example I can give this, honoring whose news is it. Our youngest daughter lived with us up until a few months ago, and she had made the dean's list in college. I was on the dean's list also. It was the other list, however. And this girl made the one that they brag about, out. And I came home, and Lindsay was just all over me, just so thrilled and excited about all of that. I spoke with Linda on the phone twice that day before she got home, and I did not tell her, because that's not my news. That was Lindsay's news. And so the idea of whose news is it? When she's got big deals and great stuff going on in her life, I let her be the one that tells everybody in the family. Try to honor whose news is it, and that has helped us an awful lot.
If it seems like I'm talking fast, I am, so there. Because this word autonomy, that self-contained thing, several years ago, we sat down with 4 couples, all in recovery, and we were going to go through the traditions, kind of like we're doing today. And to get to know each other, we went around the room and kind of shared. And out of 4 couples, which means there were 8 people, we represented 20 marriages. We're just really trying to do this different. And the self-containment, to me, has to do with that. I guess last year we were going out to West Texas, my old stomping grounds, to speak at a conference, and I started getting really uneasy about it. And on the airplane ride, I thought, okay, I'm finally going to have to come clean about this. I said, Scott, I need to talk to you about something. He says, okay. I said, look, we're going out to West Texas. We're going to bump up against some of my old friends. We're going to see some of the places that I'd lived. And, I've already told you that Scott's my 3rd husband. I said, if I call you by the wrong name, please don't take it personally. And his whole face just relaxed. He said, I've been so afraid of that all this time. We'd been married, 6 years at that time. He says, I've just been petrified that I would do that. And so the deal is, I don't have to take that so personally. It's just the way, he came out of a 26-year-old marriage. Of course he would have that other name in his head, quite often. So That's what that means to me. And, I sponsor young women, and they say, they look at my story and they say, well, doesn't anybody make the transition from recovery into wellness? From the drinking days into wellness. I really like to save my marriage, and I know that I had, about a year and a half in my second marriage in recovery, and it just wasn't meant to be. And I said, yeah, Lois and Bill, Dr. Bob and Ann, look around the program. There are very, very many marriages that do make the transition into early recovery, into long-time relationships. Tradition number 5 says, each Al-Anon family group has but one purpose: to help families of alcoholics. We do this by practicing the 12 steps of AA ourselves, by encouraging and understanding our alcoholic relative, and by welcoming and giving comfort to families of alcoholics. That's a wonderful, wonderful tradition for me. For one thing, I guess everybody maybe or maybe does not know, but the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is not conference-approved literature for Al-Anon. And I don't talk about that in meetings, and I don't talk about it when I'm sharing my story. But I can tell you, this tradition, practicing the 12 steps of AA ourselves, that tradition gives me permission to peek into that book. And to the family afterwards, 2 wives, all of that book, the promises are very, very much a part of my relationship with myself, with God, and with Scott. So that's how I believe in that tradition. The other word in that tradition is this wonderful phrase, giving comfort. Giving comfort. I mean, what an unbelievable assignment if to go out and give comfort. I feel like I'm getting comfort from you right now with this eye contact. When I came into Al-Anon, I could tell you exactly what kind of shoes everybody wore, because that's all I saw. I kept my head down, And so the eye contact is one way of giving comfort. Some of the things that's happened to us to be able to give comfort are kind of funny, I think. We live in Nashville, Tennessee, and we're very blessed. We have a house in Florida that's about 450 miles away. And we were going to go there one time on a holiday, and that's a long drive for us. And we only had about 4 days. That was a day driving, 2 days there, and a day driving back. But we were really tired, and we really needed this holiday, and we were really looking forward to it. And that night, before we were going to get up early the next morning to make this trip, I said to Scott, what if we don't go? And he says, not go on our vacation? And I said, yeah, what if we don't go? What if we just stay here in town, hang out the do not disturb sign? Our family already knows that we're going to be gone. The people we sponsor knows that we're going to be gone. So why don't we just stay here? And that's what we did. In a spontaneous, thing to get to do, we stayed home. Nashville's a great place to play tourist. We did all the things we would do in another city. We went to a lot of movies. We ate out. We went to meetings that we didn't usually go to. And we picked up 2 extra days on our vacation. I came in so rigid that I couldn't give comfort, because if you're on a plan, on a schedule, on an agenda, there's very little room for comfort. But I could give comfort by saying, let's just change our ideas of what we're going to do and how we're going to spend our time with that. Another time we were traveling down to that vacation home. Oh, it had been a long trip. We were in a pickup truck, and we had a canoe on the top of it. And we started out in the daytime, and then it got night, and that always makes the trip seem longer. And then it started raining, and this canoe would push back, and Scott would have to get out and push it back forward, and we'd do a few more miles, and there was a mark on the canoe, and when it got to the window, I'd say, it's time to get out, and oh my goodness, it was raining, and it was ugly, and it was a long trip, and we were tired, and I thought, and we were tense, and I thought, my commitment to myself is I'm not going to live this way. That silence that's building up, and I thought, I'm not going to live this way. So we're driving along, Scott's white-knuckling, and I'm over there, and I'm going, would you like to play recovery trivia? And he goes, what's that? And I said, I don't know, but I think it goes something like this. I'll say a phrase, and then you say a phrase. And like one day at a time, Easy does it, and in the South we have what we call eating meetings. I'd say eating meetings, and he'd say call your sponsor. And I'm talking, 2 hours and 942 phrases later, we are laughing and having a good time. And we have given comfort to each other. You have to just know that it's okay to kind of do things a little bit different.
What she left out of the story before that, the one where we did the vacation in Nashville, is that I was running Mach 2 with my hair on fire, working way too many hours and too hard, and I had managed to blast a 4-day hole in the schedule. I was going to come back to continue doing that. And she gave that to me as a gift when she said, let's don't go. And we're going to talk about that kind of thing here in a little while. Spiritual growth, I believe, is the primary purpose of this relation canoe that we're in. And I believe that requires 4 commitments, and I'd like to talk about them. The 4 commitments are, I'm committed to my growth, I'm committed to her growth. She's committed to her growth, and she's committed to my growth. That's 4, and they're separate, and I believe it requires commitment to all 4 of them. I have been in a situation where I'm committed to my growth, I'm committed to her growth, she's committed to my growth, and she's very fine, thank you very much, and leave me alone. And that didn't work. That did not work, so it requires that commitment. Part of that commitment means that I honor her sponsorship, and I believe she's an adult, and I never, ever question her motive, ever, because that always gets me in trouble. I question somebody's motive, I wind up with a resentment every time. And for example, when we've got a nice meal planned and it's just been set on the table and the Al-Anon phone line rings and she answers it, because I mean sometimes there are emergencies, she answers it. If she takes that call, I don't sit at the table storming inside. I sit at the table and say to myself, she's an adult and she loves me and she's committed to this thing that we're doing here. And if that were not an emergency, she would have said, I will call you back. So I give that to her from in here, and I get the gift of continuing to have serenity by not judging what she's doing. And that's what it amounts to is an attitude, but it's an attitude in action. I'm privileged to do a lot of work in the local jails and prisons, and she supports that completely. Matter of fact, it's funny, she said, you haven't been in jail in a while. She said that this morning, and she likes it when I go to jail. And
And talk your way out.
yeah, she says I can talk my way out, and if I could teach that, I'd be a wealthy man, I'm sure. But she supports that, and yeah, because she likes who I am when I come out of that jail. That's what she says. Someone asked her one time, and it's because I received the gift. Tradition 6 says an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend to AA names any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. Talk about finance. Linda and I discussed finances. We have a spending limit, and we both have that exact same number in our heads right now. About 2 years ago, we reduced the number by a factor of better than half. And it's based on, that means that I can spend up to that amount without notifying her ahead of time that I'm about to do so. And it's a number that she and I have agreed to. And it's based on our current financial overall picture. We have business meetings that are separate from family meetings or gatherings where we say, matter of fact, we discovered yesterday it's time, and within the next few days we will schedule a business meeting. We'll turn off the phones and sit down, and we need to talk about our family business situation. And that's what we're going to do, because we've discovered something that we think we need to apply ourselves to. But we have agreed upon a spending limit. And that means I don't have to walk around worrying what she's doing with half a deck of credit cards down at the mall. And she's not that way anyhow, but I know what that's like. And she doesn't have to worry that I'm going to show up in a new Ferrari or something else insane. That we have set limits. And interestingly enough, a week or so ago, she went over the limit by about 20% one day. And she was a situation, she was in a department store doing things, thought it was under the limit, went ahead and do it, and immediately called and told me. Not asked my permission. When I need to get a new sport coat and 2 pair of slacks, I don't need her permission to buy clothes that I need, but she's my business partner, and she deserves to know what I am doing financially. And that's how we approach that.
To me, tradition number 6 is kind of a long way, the one least problems of money, property, prestige. To me, that says one thing to me, and this is what I believe with all my heart, that God made enough money. And you just don't go there, just don't have to go there. Number 7 says, every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. What I love about this one is I have been in my lifetime with money. I have been in my lifetime without money. I've been in my lifetime with money. I've been in my lifetime without money. And I kind of do like the times that I do have money. But I've discovered that the times that I didn't have money, and then when the money came back into my life, that it was for my use and not for my control. That money is just to be used. And when I did have money and I would sit down and pay the bills, I would let it almost be a prayer of gratitude. Thank you, God, that I do have the funds to be able to pay this particular bill. Thank you, God, that I have this prosperity. And what I've come to believe is I can trust that prosperity. It's a we program. They're people that we've helped, they're people that have helped us, you know, I mean, I just believe all through that prosperity is something that we can trust, that it's going to be okay. We're going to have shelter, we're going to have food, we're going to have a chance to go to a meeting. We have a friend that, under circumstances, he just got out of a lengthy time in prison. I just want to say this about money. And through circumstances, he's at the bus station and he's walking to a meeting, and he finds a penny. And they pass the basket at his first meeting, being on the outside. And people are putting in $1, and some people are putting in $2 because we realize that the price of some things have gone up. And then when it came his turn, he put in the penny. And I said, you gave more than anybody else did, because he gave 100% of everything he had in his pocket. So it doesn't matter about the zeros behind the dollars. It matters about what's in the heart as far as the dollars are concerned.
On the self-supporting, Linda and I both had major job changes since we got married. We worked out a way for her to stop working. She didn't just walk in one day and say, I quit. She and I prayerfully approached that. I found it necessary to sell out of a business I was a major partner in, so that we'd have, quite honestly, so we'd be able to do this, because we were having to say no because I was working so many weekends. And we prayerfully approached that together, and I think that's really important that we discussed it. I would also say, talking about finances, that we do not have a church, but we believe in tithing. And so that means it gives us a real opportunity to be creative, to find a place where we think God's work is being done and just put a little bit in. I personally, in Middle Tennessee, I just carry a trunk full of tapes with me, and I find a newcomer, I hand them speaker tapes. But there are a lot of creative things that can be done. We do not have a 13th tradition, which is to put exactly $1 in the basket. It's not in there. I got sober in the summer of '84, and it was the custom to put $1 in the basket. Marlboros were 52 cents a pack at that time. A little perspective. Self-support means that if I get it out, I put it back. If I drop it, I pick it up. If I mess it up, I clean it up. I think that's really important. That's part of self-supporting. It's me picking up after myself. Tradition 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. We don't give each other therapy. That's been really good. We fight fair. We've been crosswise a little bit this week, and by my standards, from where I came from, I mean, this is nothing. I mean, there weren't even any weapons out. It was just we do no name calling. That would be 0 amount of name calling. We don't do that. Page 133 in the AA Big Book. God has abundantly supplied this world with fine doctors, psychologists, and practitioners of various kinds. Do not hesitate to take your health problems to such persons. Most of them give freely of themselves that their fellows may enjoy sound minds and bodies. Try to remember that though God has wrought miracles among us, we should never belittle a good doctor or psychiatrist. Their services are often indispensable in treating a newcomer and in following his case afterward. As necessary, we do get professional help. I guess it's been 3 times in 8.5 years where we've gotten crosswise. Typically it happens when old stuff comes up for both of us at the same time. If it only comes up for one of us, we handle it real well with there's a conflict resolution technique, is what it's called, based on the St. Francis prayer, to love than to be loved, to understand than to be understood. If you're not familiar with it, I've got it as a handout up here. If you want one afterward, I would be more than happy to give it to you. It's something that's worked beautifully for us. We were at a party one time talking about this thing, and someone said, well, when's the last time you used it? I said, well, it was 2 weeks ago. And they said, well, what was your argument or disagreement about? And I said, well, it was, what was it about? And she didn't know either. 2 weeks. Because this thing allows you to be thorough and to finish, so that the next time something comes up, there's nothing in the brown bag that she's talking about. And I think that's really, really important. I'd also like to read again from the AA Big Book. This is page 118 in the chapter 2 Wives. What a friend of mine says, by the way, it's the only misprint in the Big Book. 2 wives, 2 T-O. It should be T-W-O, 2 wives. That's the average. This is page 118 in the chapter 2 Wives. You and your husband will find you can dispose of serious problems easier than you can the trivial ones. Next time you and he have a heated discussion, no matter what the subject, it should be the privilege of either to smile and say, "This is getting serious. I'm sorry I got disturbed. Let's talk about it later." If your husband is trying to live on a spiritual basis, he will also be doing everything in his power to avoid disagreement or contention. It's pretty important that we don't have to have nuclear war right now. We can wait and calm down, and that really, it means a lot to me to be able to do that.
I absolutely love this tradition, the one that says about forever non-professional. It's taken me a lot of meetings to realize that there's not a professional way to load the dishwasher. You know, I thought it was my way or the highway, always, you know. There's not a professional way to take out the garbage. It's the fact that you just get the chore done, you know, and it's friendlier in our household when I remember that. The thing about special workers is I believe that in a household that there are times, and if you can afford it, that you certainly need as a young couple a chance to hire a babysitter occasionally. That's a special worker. I also believe in two working families, if there's a chance for you to have somebody come in and clean your house, and maybe that's an opportunity of somebody else to have the beginning of a career, to go ahead and work that out. Have somebody come in and maybe come and clean your house if you're working long hours. Yes. Although, like one of my speakers, I like this idea of dating somebody that has a maid. I thought that was a very clever, a new plan, as it were. And also about this one, and Scott discussed that about our arguing. I think that one thing that I have in this relationship is that I feel like that I'm safe when we're arguing. It doesn't feel life-threatening, and it also has the understanding that we are going to continue to argue till we find out what we're arguing about. So many times we are arguing about the dishwasher and my history of how it's loaded, and really that's not what was going on. It was something a lot more major than that. So I have to keep on at it until I find out what it is that's really disturbing me. Tradition number 9 says, our groups as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. I love this part about never being organized. In our area, they get in a circle to try to do the Lord's Prayer. There is no organization in that process. People bump up and pull chairs out. I mean, it really is a difficult thing to get in this circle, you know, to do the Lord's Prayer. So we aren't organized. When we have committees in our household, some of our committees are, I'm the committee that pays the household bills. That's just the way we've worked it out. Scott is the committee that makes the travel arrangements. Now, sometimes I get invited to an Al-Anon speaking thing, and he's not invited, but he still makes the travel arrangements because that's his committee. And I'm thinking, what do they feel like? They say, when are you going to get there? And I go, I'll have to ask my husband. What time is your plane arrive? I'll have to ask my husband. You know what I'm thinking? Boy, this is our Al-Anon speaker. She's got to go to him but to find out when she's going to get on the airplane. But the point is, with his business schedule, he needs that, and he's got the phone numbers, and he's got our frequent flyer numbers, and so that's just part of his assignment as far as the committee is concerned. You know, at some point in time, we may change those jobs. I don't know. The whole point about tradition number 9 to me has to do with the reason you have committees that are directly responsible. They go out and do their job, and then they come back and they communicate with you with what's going on. That's what committees do. They're a process of communication. And I feel like that relationship is just a process of communication. And my favorite story about this, I go to this story and it helps me remember how important communication. This is a couple, this woman, true story, she and her husband, it was like, just a couple of months before they both got into recovery. So things in their household are really, really bad. It's really extreme. And Christmas is coming up, and she's all distraught, but she finds the perfect Christmas present for him. She wraps it up, and she puts it under the tree. A couple of days later, his present to her shows up under the tree, and it's the very same size, it's the very same shape, it weighs the same. She is so excited. She feels like they're now going to be on the same page. They truly are communicating. They've given each other the perfect gift back and forth. She's convinced. She's so convinced that Christmas morning, she says, honey, let's just at the same time rip this paper off of it, because she's convinced that this is the same gift that they've given to each other. She had given him a very large hardback cover of the Bible. He had given her the joys of sex. It's all in communication.
I just hate to follow that story. I like this thing about being not organized. We're not organized, but we're together. We smilingly say that we are without adult supervision. And I think we are. We have kind of organized into who likes to do. I happen to like to do the dishes. For me, it's playing in the water, and I don't think anything about it. That's a chore for her. Get ready for this, gentlemen. She likes to mow grass. I bought her a new lawnmower. Am I a prince or what? And I had the guy at the store put it together for her. And I started for her too. I do some of the grocery shopping. I don't mind it. We communicate about these things. I thank her every time she does my laundry. When I take her out to lunch or to a meal, she thanks me for taking her out. That still astounds me. It's a pretty fantastic thing to live with someone who is just simply grateful. And I think that's one of the keys to happiness. 10 says, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. Talk about outside issues and public controversy. I never say anything negative about her to anyone, ever. There are two exceptions. She's one. I can take anything to her that I want to. And the other one is my sponsor. I can go to him with anything negative about her. If I don't mind listening to him ask me what I did that caused that, I can just jump right in, just have a good time with it. I do not plan activities for us. I can plan my own, but I don't commit her time and she doesn't commit mine, and that's really wonderful. We do calendars often. We sit down probably about once a week and review what do we got on the calendar. We need to put a couple up day in here. We're going to the Maryland State Convention. Maybe we ought to go in a day early so we eat some more crab. Those kinds of things. That one worked out, by the way. One of the other outside issues is that I do not listen to other women complain about their men. In my home group, there aren't very many people been around longer than I have, and you'll wind up being the dadgum chaplain of the place if you aren't careful. And one of the things I do not do is listen to women complain about their men. That's the beginning of an emotional affair. And if one of them starts, I say, wait, please stop. I can't listen to that. I'd like to recommend that you talk to your sponsor about that or to your man, but I cannot be in this conversation because I do not want to be involved in that. I also learned a wonderful lesson from Linda about the difference between humor and sarcasm. Sarcasm is from the Latin word meaning tearing of flesh. It's a very painful thing, and I grew up not knowing the difference. Linda says that the difference is if something is humorous, it can be fixed in 10 minutes. It's something someone could fix in 10 minutes. And my favorite example, we worked a trade show one time, and I was standing in my trade show booth and looked down and realized that I had on two shoes, which is different from a pair of shoes. You got that? Okay. And she went and told everybody, she's got to come look at Scott's wearing two shoes that don't match. That's humor, because I could have walked back up to the room and changed that in 10 minutes, and it didn't do any damage, and I think that's a beautiful thing, is I don't laugh at things that tear flesh anymore. I know the difference between sarcasm and humor.
My understanding about public controversy has to do with my past history. I always thought volume was the voice of reason. That if I could just tell it a little louder one more time, then they were going to get it. And many times that was in a public situation. So I have to continue to listen to my own voice. If I hear my volume going up, something's going on with me, not with him. I have to be very, very, very careful about the volume of my voice. In our Dilemmas to the Alcoholic Marriage, they go a lot of pages on talking about marriage and relationship. And then finally on there, kind of hidden in the middle, there's one word in italics. It kind of sums up the whole thing. And the magic word is courtesy. We have to continue to be courteous. And that's, how I act in a meeting is the way I need to act at home. How I act at a meeting and at home needs to be the way I act at the grocery store. I need to say please and thank you. And I need to be consistent with that public controversy part. Number 11, right? Mm-hmm. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, TV, and films. We need guard with special care the anonymity of all AA members. I'm so glad they put in this tradition that has TV, because in a relationship, it is very important as who gets to hold the remote. That's a very important thing. And if they didn't have that in this tradition, we would not know in our household who was supposed to hold the remote. This radio, press, TV, it all has to do with language and communicating again. And in our relationship, we have our own language. And if you'll think back, your relationships have that too. Maybe you start with a pet name. Maybe you start with a little ritual or ceremony, and it gets to be like you can have a shared moment, and you'll be with some other people, and they'll say a word that triggers that, and you look at each other, and you kind of have a personal giggle, a personal shared moment. You know, that's our own language that starts developing, and the longer we're together, the more fun that gets to be. And it can be it's a safe thing, you know, it's not something secret, it's just a very private thing that can be fun. We also have codes, and that we've worked out ahead of time as far as our language is concerned. And the best example of that is my parents live in the same town that where we live, and we can go visit them, and we can go, and I'm in, you know, helping my mom, and we've done dinner, and then we've watched some TV, and you know, Scott's kind of ready to go home. Well, he's the son-in-law. I have to say, he's the favorite son-in-law. I mean, they have experience with that. He is absolutely their favorite son-in-law that they've ever had.
She's an only child.
I'm an only child. That's right. That's right. He's their now and forever son-in-law, you know. But there comes a time that he's ready to go home, and I get caught up in being there with my parents, and maybe I'm not so ready. And, you know, it'd be a little more polite if I was the one that made the action that it was time to go home. So Scott gives me this code, you know, it's a physical code. Remember how when Carol Burnett used to pull her ear and say hello to her grandmother? It's not that, but it's like that he can do something and I can say, oh wow, it's getting kind of late. It's time for us to go home. We also use this after the Scott's home group is an open AA meeting, and a lot of times I go with him, and we go early, and then we have the meeting, and then we stay late. And after a while, I'm kind of ready to go home, get on with my Saturday afternoon, and so I can give him that code. It's just a personal thing that we've worked out in the relationship. And I guess the main thing about this tradition is, you know, Al-Anon believes that alcoholism is a family illness. We see it going from generation, we see it sometimes skipping generations, but we do see a pattern here. And what I believe through this thing of press, radio, TV, attraction rather than promotion, that we have a chance to pass on the recovery from generation to generation.
And I want to say something about that TV remote, too. The reason that a man holds a remote is not to find out what's on TV, it's to find out what else is on TV.
Oh!
Right? So a few ladies were wondering about that. The visual signals Linda talked about, we got 2 or 3 others, just so that because we are a unit. And if she doesn't want to go do something, I don't want to go either. If she's ready to get out of here, so am I. Because this is my primary interest, it's my primary concern. And she treats me the same way. We have a visual signal that says, I'd like to do that. We have another one that says, I don't want to do that. And we have another one that says, I can go either way, I don't care. And we can do those so quickly right here in front of you, you would never know. And so that we can stay together. So we can communicate without her being in front of my home group saying, geez, no, I don't want to go to lunch with those drunks again, let's get out of here. I don't want her to have to do that. So tradition 11, we've got a friend that says manipulation is trying to get somebody to do something without asking them. Pretty powerful. So what I am learning, and I don't have this one yet, but I am learning that I can ask for what I want and need. Now part of my problem is I can't tell my wants from my needs. I'm an alcoholic. Alcoholism is at least in some ways a learning disability, don't you think? I mean, I wasn't getting it, were you? And but I'm in the process of learning that I can ask her for what I'd like to have. The key is that I can take no for an answer very gracefully. The reason is because all of my needs and the vast majority of my wants are being filled. I stand before you a very fulfilled man. I want to brag on her Al-Anon program. I don't think we could have the relationship we have today if she didn't have a great Al-Anon program. I salute you. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I have a sign on my desk that says simply, "Ask Linda." That's how good her program is. Her program is so good that if I want to know what she thinks about something I'm doing or saying, I have to ask her. I'm not on her caseload. I am not a husband in training. And it is such a fabulous, fabulous thing. She also, now you talk about a great program, she does not help me find parking places when I'm driving. Unless I ask her, she never mentions it. It's astonishing. I've still got to get that one, don't I, Jerry? But, I mean, she is just amazing on that, absolutely amazing. Tradition 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. I was on a time constraint this morning when I told my story, and I had to leave out one of my favorites, but I had a privilege a number of years ago. In part, anonymity means do something nice for somebody and don't get caught. That's in part what anonymity is. Also, anonymity means that I give my first and last names in AA meetings, always. If that strikes you as being real strange, I'd like to recommend the AA pamphlet, Understanding Anonymity, and the book, Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. It's laid out pretty clearly in there. I see some people not. I noticed y'all did the badges with first and last names. Congratulations. Let's apply our traditions to what we're doing. But in part, anonymity has to do with doing something nice and not getting caught. It's when I want to go see, the war movie, and she wants to go to the chick flick. I can say, yeah, let's go to a chick flick. Why not? It's not that big a deal. And I don't exact a price for it later. Okay? I don't go with a bad attitude. I go with a good attitude. She does these things much better than I do. She watches NFL games on TV with me. And I think there are probably things she'd rather. I got to tell you, watching an NFL game with her is an interesting thing. I'm going to tell this. I was sitting there watching one of the playoff games. I'm really engrossed in this thing. And she says, "Say, those guys they call the offensive line." I said, yeah. What? She says, maybe if they'd take showers and brush their teeth, they wouldn't call them offensive line. Yeah, you really get some perspectives hanging around some of these people. But I'm into the applause. There's never been enough, and it'll never be loud enough. And so it's hard for me to do this anonymity giving thing. And I'm going to tell a story. I had an experience a number of years ago where I had the chance to do something nice for someone and not get caught, and I did that. And I didn't tell anybody, and this is going to sound poetic, and I'm sorry, but those of you who've had this experience are going to know what I'm talking about. Suddenly, something brilliant happened inside my chest. It was like a piece of sunshine about the size of a golf ball resided in my chest. And whatever I would think about this thing that I had done, it would glow and it would send light throughout my whole body. I see some people nodding who know what I'm talking about. And I think when I do something good and nobody finds out, God gets the credit. And I get one of these little golf ball sized pieces of sunshine. And no matter what's going on in my life, any time of the day or night, I can think about what I did, and this thing glows and it fills my body with light. And I didn't tell a soul for about 6 months. And I don't get ahead of me now. And finally one day I couldn't stand it. I told somebody, and that piece of sunshine came out with the words. And I'm going to tell you what it was now. I took a little boy fishing. He was about 7 years old. He had no fishermen in the family. I met him in a public park. We did the deal with his mother, and I put him in the front of a canoe, and we floated the Buffalo River for about 9 hours one day. He caught a 4-pound smallmouth. I could have strangled him. Anyway, he caught my fish. And, he was spectacular. We had a wonderful day out there. And about a mile from the takeout, where there's no place to pull out of the river, we just come down a long run, and I look up, and the sky is black, and I'm hearing thunder, and we are fixing to get it. And as we got down to the bottom of this run, I did what canoeists call eddy out. There's a backwater eddy on one side, and I was able to parallel park the canoe over there and kind of slide up under some trees, and boy, the bottom fell out. And on the inside, I am just about to give God Almighty a piece of my mind about here St. Scott is taking this boy out here to fish, and this is what I get. I'm just before that. And this beautiful little boy looks over his shoulder at me as I get the canoe parked up under those trees. He says, "Is it okay to fish here?" And isn't that the right question? Isn't that the question I'm supposed to ask when the clouds get dark and the rain starts to fall in my life? Is it okay to fish here? That's my question. What a gift that was to me. But I told about this, and so I don't have that piece of sunshine anymore. But I know people that they're just full of those things from having done beautiful things and not told anybody. If you haven't tried that, I'll tell you another one that's fun. is I had a beautiful experience in a convenience store. On a Christmas day, I walked in, we were out of milk, and I was, racing down there, run in, grab the milk, I'm going to pay him and rush out. And I got a gift, and the gift was that my heart saw the human standing behind the counter, not the vehicle by which I could buy this gallon of milk. And this is the gift that I received. And the gift was that my heart spoke out loud to him and said, "Thank you for working on Christmas Day. Well, I bet there's someplace else you'd rather be. But my family ran out of milk. If you hadn't come to work today, we couldn't get it. I want to thank you for working on the holiday." And we both cried. What a gift that was to me. So I'm learning to be thankful, to simply say thank you. Especially on the weekend, if I buy anything, they hand me my Big Mac and my fries, I say thank you. I look around and say, "Hey, back in the kitchen, thanks for making lunch, I appreciate it." Try that, see what happens to you. It's this beautiful gift that happens in here, but don't tell anybody, okay? Now that one's gone, all right. Part of anonymity is I must honor Linda's solitude. She needs to be alone some. She needs to sit in the hammock and just be there, and I have to honor that and let her do it. And I want to tell a story. I knew a fella, and he and his fiancée, when they dated, they went to the ballet all the time. And every time you looked up, he's in a tuxedo and she's in an evening gown, and they're going to the ballet. And when they got married, as they were walking down the aisle out of the church, he turned to her and said, "I'm so glad we're finally married." And she says, "Great, thank you. Why?" He says, "So I'll never have to go to a blankety-blank ballet again." That is not anonymous giving. That is a lie. There's a difference. And I think it's really important to talk about that. I think the first requirement for me to have a healthy relationship is that I don't have to have one. If I got to have one, I'm not healthy enough to be in one. And it was necessary for me to be able to stand alone, not needy. Because when I'm needy, I'm crazy as an outhouse rat when I'm needy. Whoops. Why don't you talk about that a little bit, and I'll go to the other one.
Al-Anon is really blessed that there are a lot of great readings in our ODAP book and in the Courage to Change. And just recently, there's sharings from adult children. It's called Hope for Today. And I look back in that into relationships, and there are a lot of readings on that. So I don't care which program you're in, if you get your hands on some of the literature, I think you'll find it really fun. And there's also one of our pamphlets. It's called, I always forget what it's called, but it has to do with sex. And it's a pamphlet, and it's about 30 pages. There are no pictures, but it's great reading. So check that out. And the thing about Tradition 12 is the spirituality, the spiritual foundation, and principles above personalities. I love Scott. I absolutely love him. And I also like him. And there's a big difference in those two things. I think he's a swell guy, as y'all can see, and I like him. I think he's funny, and I enjoy being with him. Some days I have what I call my spiritual flat tires, and I can remember we'd been married about 6 months, and that got to be the joke. I called my sponsor that morning, and that's when I said, "Scott ate his cereal wrong today." He had not changed the way he ate his cereal. It had to do with me, and for that particular day, it was bugging me. I was not on a spiritual foundation. And I had to always go back and look at myself under those conditions. He's coming up on a birthday in AA. I've been hanging around Al-Anon. That doesn't mean that he's still not an alcoholic and I'm still not a co-alcoholic. We're still having to do this deal by living these principles as best we can. There's a wonderful reading in The Courage to Change, and there are a lot that I could have picked, but I picked this one, and I'd like to close my part with this. It's on page 244. "I have often tried to change other people to suit my own desires. I knew what I needed, and if those needs weren't met, the problem was with the other person. I was looking for someone who would always be there for me, but would not impose on me very much. Looking back, it's almost as if I were looking for a pet rather than a human being. Naturally, this outlook put a strain on my relationships. In Al-Anon, I have learned that there's a difference between what I expect and what I need. No one person can be all things to me. I have to have that spiritual foundation so I don't put too many demands on the people that are in my life. I say that Al-Anon saved my life, literally saved my life. There was an incident that involved a gun with a former husband, and I heard the word detach, and I got out of that situation. And now it saved my life, and it changed my life, and it's a way of life for me today. I absolutely say thank you for letting me share. I'm going to go ahead and read I don't know what our time thing looks like, but I'm going to read this last thing. This is a sharing of I'm going to let you, somebody said the word into me, it says into me see. I'm going to let you into an intimate part of my life. This little note came from Scott. It's on a piece of paper, and it says, from the desk of Scott Lee. And it's a note that showed up. I was going on a trip, and he wasn't going to be there. And I found it in my suitcase when I got there. That's one thing that we do, is that we send love and prayer ahead of time, so it'll be there when we get there. So that was his way of sending his love and prayer that would be there with me. And this note says a lot, and there's not a date on it, so that means it's ageless. It could have happened in the first year, it could have happened last week, and I hope that it'll continue to be part of our lives tomorrow. And it says, Dearest Linda, thank you for being my girl, my friend, my fishing buddy, my partner, my joy, my laughter, my tears, my lover, my wife. My cup runneth over with you. Scott. Thank you, husband.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
In the few minutes that we don't have left, we've already run over. I want to cover one other thing. This is another one of Linda's little things. She comes up with so much neat stuff. She came up with a concept that's a one-couple retreat. And I've got a handout on this if anybody wants one. It's on the other side of this conflict resolution thing. It's just one page. What we did was we planned a retreat for the two of us. Not a vacation, it's a working retreat with a schedule. We honored it by, I guess we took 6 months to plan this thing. We came up with the topics we wanted to cover. We planned menus. We figured out, when we got the topics, we figured out which ones are going to be tough, which ones are going to be easy, so we don't back up 2 or 3 hard ones in a row. We figured out how long each one would take, and we planned this thing. And we dropped off the planet. We left on a Thursday afternoon. Everybody we sponsored, all the family members knew one of the daughters has the phone number where we're going to be, and you can call it if it's an emergency. We define emergency for them. Emergency is when there's blood on the floor and you have already dialed 911. That's an emergency. You have to have both of those in place or don't call. And we did grocery shopped on the way in. We alternated chairing these things, and we absolutely broke contact with the planet. No newspaper, radio, TV, nothing. We did prayer and meditation, and we did sessions. We had time off, we took walks, and it was one of the most powerful experiences of my life. This thing is not designed to fix a broken relationship. It is, we believe, designed to enhance one that's already working really well. And it was powerful for us. I'm going to read you just a short list of some of the things that we talked about. Talked about retirement. We talked about these spending limits that we just mentioned to you. And the one we set then is, the one we got today is less than half of that. We talked about business, and we talked about every family member, both sides. We took the gloves off completely, because this is safe. We also had a rule in place that either one of us could stop it at any given time and say, I'm not prepared to deal with that topic right now, but we will see a professional when we get home and deal with it. And we didn't find it necessary to do that, but the fact that we had that in place made the whole thing very, very safe. We kept notes. Neither one of us is literate, to be honest about it, but her handwriting is less worse than mine. And so she was the recording secretary, and we already had a plan 6 months out. We already had an evening planned where we were going to sit and review it to see if we had made the changes that we'd committed to see where we were with this thing. We talked about hobbies. We talked about toys. Toys are things like boats and airplanes, by the way. We talked about fears. We talked about sex. She talked about what it was like for a young girl to go through puberty. I had no idea. We just a wonderful thing. We talk about our own deaths. I talked about what it would be like to me to get the news that she was gone. I don't know how to tell you what happened inside me, except that it touched a depth of my soul that has not been touched before or since. And she held me while I absolutely sobbed with that. And if she goes first, she has already begun helping me with the grieving process. I don't mean to be poetic, but this is a poetic kind of thing that happened with us. We talked about growing old together. We talked about recreation. We talked about pet peeves. We talked about spirituality. We talked about God. We talked about meditation. We talked about commitment. We talked about all of these things. And I've got our list of the things that we did. And I can tell you that we drove away from there that Sunday afternoon, and I've never felt closer to a human being in my life. I felt more married. Yeah.
We should have talked about how to put the toilet paper on.
Should have talked about how to put the toilet paper on. That's our only closed subject. I lied earlier. We have one closed subject. And I hope you know we're playing with that. You got anything else? Because I got a couple things to close with. We cheer for each other. But if you want one of these things on one couple retreat, we'd love for you to have it. If you take one and you do it, my email address is on here. Please let us know how it goes. Let us know what you learned. What did you do that we didn't do? Because we want to do this. Now, we've done it since then. And that one turned more into a vacation because we kept it pretty clean. And we've got these things in place. We still have individual business meetings about certain things. But that one long weekend was a powerful, powerful thing. We cheer for each other. We compliment each other. We cuddle. We have compassion for each other. We communicate, and we are committed. My priorities are not what I say they are. My priority is what I do. If I want to know what my priorities are, I don't listen to my words about the future. I look at my actions in the recent past. If it got done, it was a priority. If it didn't, it was not a priority. And anything I say to the contrary is a lie that I'm telling me. That's why it's important that I do a daily review of my life as per pages 86 and 87 so I can see what my priorities were. I think it's really, really important. The Buddhists have a wonderful saying. They say the only way to get into heaven is to bring somebody with you. Yeah, isn't that beautiful? And I'm planning on taking her. And I have another sign on my desk, and it says, remember, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. We love you all deep. God bless and keep you. Thank you. Having fun? Closing the Lord's Prayer for the here.